I talked to a professor after a lecture one day and asked him questions out of curiosity about the lecture. And he brought up a belief and concept that really just surprised me because I did not realize this at all. And basically, what this concept was in a nutshell was that humans who make movements on saving the earth, saving the wildlife, preventing extinction, or saving the resources are really just being selfish and saying, save the human species, because there are plenty of organisms on the surface of the earth and hundreds, if not thousands of miles beneath the earth that will continue to flourish even if the most catastrophic nuclear war occurred and wiped out almost everything on the surface of the earth. Now, how is this possible? Because if they're living hundreds of thousands of miles beneath our surface, there's plenty of protection there, and these varied microbes will continue to grow, continue to breed, reproduce, and they'll multiply and grow, and they'll find the different niches and repopulate the earth, and they will continue to live, but we will be dead. And so those people who are serving to protect the earth are only altruistic if they're really trying to protect other species. And if they're really just trying to protect us from extinction, then that's a really sort of selfish thing in a certain way. And obviously I'm not saying that conserving our resources is a bad thing. On the contrary, but it is a very eye-opening concept. And on the flip side, when you bring it down to mass extinctions, from our records and a lot of historical research, apparently we've had about 5 or 6 great massive extinctions that have wiped out a great majority of the species on our earth. And obviously a lot of genetic diversity has been lost, but again, certain niches will survive, reproduce, flourish, and bring about amazing creatures like what has happened in the past and what has brought out us. In fact, our existence as the Homo sapien species, like it or not, is thanks to those 5 or 6 mass extinction events, which could have been caused by enormous asteroids or floods or earthquakes that wiped out a majority of the species that were the top dogs of the time. In fact, if those didn't happen, we probably would not be here, and potentially dinosaurs would still be walking this earth. And although they're really cool, I personally think that the human species is a lot more cool than dinosaurs, simply for the development of our brain and how it works and how it interacts with the rest of our physiology. It's just amazing. Intellect is probably one of the most intricate and amazing and complex and blessed traits to ever have been evolved from a species on Earth. Now, having said all that, it is very interesting to think how resilient our Earth is. So, in the worst case scenario, if a nuclear war were to wipe out everything, or enormous rock hurtling from space, which a lot of physicists and astrophysicists and mathematicians seem to have converged on the idea that it will eventually happen out of just pure probability in our future, and not too far away, probably in the next 100,000 years, a large meteorite or asteroid of some sort that's enormous, that's just hurtling towards our Earth, that's almost the size of the Earth or a fraction of the size, that thing could in fact wipe out most, if not all, the species on the Earth. And potentially, hopefully, we may get the technology by then to annihilate it somehow. But as of the current age, if something like that were to happen, despite the movies replicating this scenario, we probably wouldn't have the technology to blow that thing up. And there have been a lot of theories on what would happen, but obviously there'd be a huge crater on the Earth for a while. It would upheave a lot of dust, which would potentially obscure the skies, cut off our contact with sunlight, which potentially happened in the past, and that is it's one of the theories that wiped out a lot of the dinosaurs. And so it is very interesting to think how resilient the Earth is. And when I question my professor on topic, and obviously this is just his opinion, And his theory, it's obviously, it could be wrong, but he said, when I asked him, okay, is the Earth so resilient in the fact that no matter what sort of attack it gets, there will be some sort of organism, whether it's a cockroach or some microbes hundreds of miles underneath our surface, that will survive and carry out the survival of certain genomes that will reproduce and differentiate and thrive, and certain niches, new niches will be formed. Is our Earth really that resilient? He said not to that extent, and he said that certain events such as a enormous object hurling towards our Earth, or some other event like a enormous flood, or potential who knows, a potential dramatic solar flare of some sort, if that were to happen, then that could potentially kill all life. But I personally found that the whole point of that, after leaving and thinking about it, was that, wow, more or less though, our Earth is a lot more resilient than we thought. The problem though is that it's probably not going to be us that survives if something that great were to happen. Despite how great our species is, we're far from all powerful, and although we'll die, some species or element of our Earth as an organism will survive and reproduce from there, which is kind of awesome and yet kind of sad and crazy as well. And so the resilience of the Earth is an astounding thing, but obviously as it goes, these sort of catastrophic extinction events do happen. In my opinion, we have a clear example up in our skies at night, the moon, which a lot of people theorize, and there has been some evidence towards it, was created from some sort of collision event with something hurling out of space, which caused a huge chunk to fall out of the Earth, I guess you could say, or rip out of the Earth and create our moon, which is now orbiting around us. And so I just think it's very interesting. And when you get down to whether or not our Earth is completely resilient, however, my opinion is it is not. Although it would be extremely hard to do so, very, very hard, we could eventually, some event or a multitude of events converging could in fact wipe out our entire Earth's organisms and species. And so it's really this strange question of why are all these species all converging towards this simple goal of survival and reproduction. And if you look at it on a more macroscopic scale, isn't it the same way in terms of our universe? Aren't planets as a whole and solar systems and sun systems being selected also in a sort of natural selection / evolution way? Which planet is just right in terms of nutrients, elements, conditions, and space from the respective sun to create Goldilocks conditions for life to thrive and grow, and which sun system with that life or Earth that is starting to thrive can survive and become resilient enough to survive all these extinction events and attacks from different probability events that will occur. And so it's almost like we're being naturally selected on the solar system and galaxy level. If you don't know what those terms are, please look them up. And it's very interesting. It's like, what the heck is going on? Is this ultimately some sort of natural selection / survival race to see which sort of organism can in fact survive in any sort of attack or event? But again, I may just be stepping outside of the realms of what's actually practically happening, because more or less these extinction events are more a result of probability rather than some constant sort of um, entity hurdling obstacles at us constantly to see which species is the supreme. And that in itself is a very subjective line, because there is no supreme or perfect evolutionary state or some sort of perfect evolutionary form that we're all evolving towards. That's actually a misconception of itself that I believe I will do a video on in the future. What natural selection truly is really just, it's not really one organism is better than all the rest. It's more so that this one just happened to be lucky and survive in this sort of environment. A good example would be black and white butterflies. Neither is supreme, and yet a sudden changing environment, like for instance, initially you might have white trees, and therefore the black butterflies were those who were worse off because the predators could find them easier. But then as what actually happened in real life, this is a real life example, factory smog colored the trees black, so now the black butterflies had an advantage. So that's a perfect example of how evolution isn't some sort of ultimate or true form, or the best ultimate resilient perfect being or of evolution that we're all evolving towards. That's not how it works. It's more so a whole idea of how whatever trait lucks out in a way, given the current environment, is the winner. So that's all I really want to say. If you really like this video, please share with someone you think would really like it as well and be influenced by it. And as always, hit the subscribe button if you like these sort of videos, and leave a comment, favorite the video, and I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching, and as always, subscribing is free. Just hit the button down below. I just wanted to add on to this video saying that I screwed up saying that there's organisms hundreds of thousands of miles under the earth. I mean, there may be, but what I meant to say was that there are confirmed to be organisms to a depth of 2 miles or more under our surface. And I just want to conclude by reading this statement made by Edward Wilson. Bacteria are the dark matter of the biological world, with 4 million mostly unknown species in a ton of soil. Populations of bacteria live in the spumes of volcanic thermal vents on the ocean floor, multiplying in water above the boiling point. And far beneath the Earth's surface, to a depth of 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers or more, dwell the slimes, which stand for subsurface lithoautotrophic microbial ecosystems, uniquely assemblages of bacteria and fungi that occupy pores in the interlocking mineral grains of igneous rock and derive their energy from inorganic chemicals. Now here's the interesting part. The slimes are independent of the world above, so even if all of it were burned to a cinder, they would carry on, and given enough time, probably evolve new life forms able to re-enter the world of air and sunlight. And so I just want to add on saying that, you know, there's still, on top of this, maybe living organisms hundreds of thousands of miles beneath our surface. We just haven't discovered it. So that just adds on to the resilience of our Earth.